This is Monday Morning Meditations number 266 on the Rising Man podcast with Jeddy Azuma. If you want to perform at the highest heights in your life, then you got to learn to have more grace with yourself. What's up, people? Jeddy Azuma here with another Monday Morning Meditations coming right your way. Happy Monday morning to you, or Monday afternoon, wherever you are in the world listening. Thank you for choosing to be here with us for today's Monday Morning Meditation. Without further ado, the title for today's Monday Morning Meditation is Balancing High Performance with Grace and Humility. So I was watching this Netflix series, Quarterback, with following these NFL quarterbacks and giving an inside look at the rigors that these high-performing athletes go through behind the scenes. And I've been watching football my whole life, and the quarterback position is one of the most difficult, challenging, mentally, physically, emotionally, across all of sports. It's unanimous. And one of these quarterbacks, Kirk Cousins, they were interviewing him, and he was talking about how he has these high standards for himself. Like a lot of elite level performers and professional athletes, they have these high level of performance standards that they have for themselves. It's how they're able to achieve championships and incredible statistics over the course of an entire career. So as he was talking about this, I was listening through my own lens, and he said something I thought was so brilliant. Maybe not a direct quote, but in his words, he said something along the lines of, you can drive yourself crazy having high standards to perform. And he said it's this walking this balance between having those high standards of performance, but also having grace and humility and understanding that I could drive myself crazy if I only hold that absolute standard as the possible outcome. And it's such a great anecdote around failure for many of us. I think especially those of us who have big visions, who are high performers, who are high achievers. Those of us who, even if you're just getting started on the creation of your vision, who have a big picture outcome that you want to achieve at the end of the day. In order to get there, we have to have high standards of performance for ourselves. It's natural, it's innate. And I think as a society, we've put so much emphasis on results and outcomes that the only way we're able to achieve and keep performing at that high standard is by pushing ourselves through so much stress, anxiety, and grief. I know because this is absolutely the way that I've motivated myself for so many years. I've learned effectively to motivate myself from stress, and I've done that for so many years in my life. But the cost and the consequence to that is that I'm not very kind to myself. I've got an internal voice and an internal critic that is just the absolute worst to me. Things that I would never say to another human being happen in my own mind. And I don't even need to ask. I know I'm not alone with that. I've talked to enough men and women, people all throughout my life who have this same high level of critic in our heads. And it's not to say that we should lower the standard. It's not to say that we should start giving ourselves a pass for not giving our best effort in everything that we do. It's to learn to balance that high expectation for performance with a high degree of grace and humility. I have to be able to tolerate failures. I have to be able to accept the outcome, knowing that I gave my best effort, but that perhaps it didn't result in exactly what I hoped it would. Otherwise, I'm always going to keep berating and punishing myself when I'm not able to perform at that level. And I think about these elite level performers and these elite athletes. They have not only their personal expectations on themselves or the expectations of their coaches, people who are paying them millions of dollars, ridiculous sums of money to play a game. And then on top of that, you have the expectations of the entire fan base, of the sports media, of the entire world that follows these individuals. That's a massive amount of pressure to perform. And at the end of the day, they're humans just like you and I. So I thought this was a wonderful metaphor for each and every one of us in our individual pursuits of excellence. Because every single one of us, we want to be great. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure it's because you want to become a better version of yourself. You want to be the best man that you can be, the best father, husband, brother, service provider, whatever it is that you do. You'd like to be the best at that, the best that you can possibly be. But that's much different than being perfect or always hitting the mark that you set for yourself. Failure is a perfectly acceptable outcome. It's acceptable for us to fail. It's inevitable. It's going to happen to every single one of us. But it's so easy to forget that, especially when we put these high standards on ourselves, these marks. We set the bar so high. If I can only jump so high, but I set the bar higher than I can actually jump, and I'm not willing to accept that I didn't make that mark, then the only outcome I'm going to have is disappointment. And then when I'm disappointed with myself, that energy just perpetuates this mentality, this way of being brutal and harsh to myself. And in my opinion, that's just not a very progressive way to move forward, not a very effective way to make progress in the areas that I want to in my life. So the take-home message here is that let's have high standards of performance, but let's balance that with grace and humility. Let's learn from these other high performers in our society who recognize that I can set the mark high and sometimes I'm not going to make it. And as long as I gave my very best effort and I was able to learn something from it, then failure and not hitting that mark is perfectly acceptable. Instead of beating down or berating or punishing myself in my head or outwardly, I can simply just treat myself with compassion, kindness, understanding, curiosity, grace, humility, and recognize that, hey, I learned and I grew from that experience. Whether I hit the mark or I didn't, it's going to, whatever that experience was, is going to help me get closer to hitting that mark next time. So I hope that this is a message that you need to hear. I know that I need to hear this on the daily. I need to be reminded of this over and over because that standard is not coming down. I refuse to lower the standard or lower the bar in my life. It only goes up. All we do is we keep moving goalposts. But in order to withstand that over the course of time, I have to have a level of grace and humility with myself, because the most important relationship to have, the most important relationship to be on good terms with, is the relationship I have with me. And if you're anything like me, that's not always the case. So let this one digest and process. If there's somebody else you know who needs to hear this one, please share this Monday morning meditation and the podcast with whoever else you think could benefit from it. And please make sure you tune in next week for another Monday morning meditation. Until next time, rise up and claim your destiny.